Good morning, everyone. My name is Thiagu Palaniappan. I'm a senior applications engineer with TriStar, TriStar being the largest reseller for PTC products in North America. So let me welcome you to the webinar in our how-to series. This is the first webinar this year, and the topic is going to be how to handle non-Creo files in Creo Parametric. Before I start the webinar, just a quick information about a promotion, subscription offer that we are running this quarter, which is going to end by the end of March. You can save 50% when you update your existing perpetual Creo license to a subscription model. If you have any additional questions or need additional information regarding this offer, please reach out to your account reps at TriStar. That said, just wanted to quickly go over from an agenda standpoint here, just to cover some of the options you have before import, right, and also the options you have after import. So really, before you start importing the model, what are the few settings you can set up in Creo using the import profile editor, right? How do you repair if required using the import data doctor, and then the new Unite technology in Creo 3, right? So just wanted to quickly go over some of the options, as well as how to, edit the geometry once you import. As you know, there is no feature history or no feature tree like in your regular Creo file. So on a non-Creo file, how do you make changes? So that's what I'm hoping to cover in the next 30 minutes or so. And then currently, all of you are muted. If you have any questions, please feel free to type in the question or the chat section, and I will definitely get to that once I cover the topics. So and towards the end, we can have a Q&A session, and feel free to start putting in your questions at the chat, the question area that I see. You can see a screenshot of how to do that right there. So I always get these questions from customers about what would be the best file that I should be using when I import, right? So your partners or suppliers are most likely sending you a step file or an IGES file, and in my experience, I've seen step works better than IGES. The data seems to translate better, but from a priority standpoint, I would always recommend using the native file if you have that, right? So if they are giving you the native file format, like a SolidWorks file or an Inventor file or an NX file or a CATIA file, I would rather use that to directly open it in Creo instead of going through the neutral file. The reason for that is, as you can imagine, when you do an export from SolidWorks or any other CAD system you export a step or an IGES file, and then you are importing that same step and IGES file back into Creo, the data translation is happening twice, and obviously there's going to be some loss of data or some surfaces missing, some gaps, slivers, etc., right, which you may have seen already if you have already done this. So to kind of minimize that, it's the best practice to use a native file if they are providing you that, or if it's supported. I will give you information as to what versions of the native file formats we support as of Creo 3.0. Now, let's say you don't have the native file and you do have the step file, you could always request them a better version of the step file. So if you see, there are different step formats. From Creo, when we export, there is an option to control, as you can see in the data exchange under file options, there's an option to control what step export format I'm going to use. Similarly, to your partners or suppliers or that have standardized on a different CAD system and they are sending you a step file, you might want to check with them if there's a way in that CAD system to give you a better export format like what you see here, right? So as you can see, the step, it really stands for standard for the exchange of the product model data, right? That's what it stands. So it's a format, as you can see, a neutral file format, and they have been improving. So with each of the formats, as you can see, you get better information that gets embedded in that step file, right? So that's a good practice. A little tip here about the step file. One more thing, I usually open that step file in a text editor like a WordPad or Notepad, and that allows you to check the resolution or the accuracy of the geometry, right? So as you know, when you import into Creo, the quality of the imported geometry is very heavily dependent on the accuracy that settings you used, right? And there's a way to control it. I'll show you how to do that. And also the unit system, right? You can also check that all using a notepad editor. Now, during the import, or before import, I should say, you have the ability to go into Import Profile Editor. Now, this is not new in Creo 3. It's been there in Wildfire 5, Creo 2, Creo 1, etc., right? Wherein you have the ability to go set up a few settings, like most important thing being the accuracy, right? Do you want the software to use an internal accuracy during import or an external accuracy during import? You might want to try out these different settings, each settings, and then see if you're getting a better geometry when you import such neutral files. And the good thing about doing this is after you're importing, and then you can always change the accuracy of the model back. And then unlike your Creo files, changing the accuracy is not going to regenerate that import geometry again. You know, that is just an imported geometry. It's only going to be used for any downstream features that you may have created after that imported geometry, right? You can also use templates. So this is a very common thing I've seen. You always have a tendency to open the stepper and IGES file directly into Creo, and what happens is you just get a coordinate system and imported geometry. I'm pretty sure that all of you would like to have your own start parts, your company standard start part that you have developed that has parameters, units, view information, and whatnot, right? So all that should be included in your import geometry, right, before you import. So you have the ability to set that up and just check the use templates and select your start part. Now, another way to do this is to start with a new part, right, using your start part, and then do the import instead of directly opening a step or an IGES or a neutral file. Okay, so you can also force the usage of these import profile. So let's say you are used to getting really complex geometry, or sometimes you get simple geometry, prismatic stuff, right? Depending on that, you could create multiple import profiles, right? You could create one called simple geometry dip file, and another one called complex geometry dip file that has a different topology settings, a different surface, healing settings in your import profile, and then you can import it as required. In fact, you can even set up the config.pro option interface in profile default and default it to, for example, simple geometry if you're going to be using that for the most part. And sometimes, occasionally, you get this complex geometry wherein you would like to use a different set of settings. So these are some generally good practices that you could use. So before I proceed here, let me quickly open up a model here. So I have a part, a step file here that I'm trying to open. So let's say I open it without any settings, no import profile settings, nothing, right? I'm just double-clicking on the step file, and you can see right here in your model tree, all you're getting is a coordinate system and an import feature, right? That's pretty much it, right? No datums, nothing, since I did not use any template, right? Also, the geometry itself, right? I just went into a darker background and I'm going into wireframe mode, and you could see how this is a lot of one-sided edges, right? I mean, you could see there are a lot of gaps, and I'm sure, and that's why it's a surface, right? So do you spend the time, like how much effort are you planning to put in Import Data Doctor to fix this? Rather than trying to directly go into Import Data Doctor from the get-go, you might want to just try out some of the settings that I was talking about. So maybe when I open it again, this time, I'm going to use templates, right? And I can go and even change those. For example, what template should I be using? As you can imagine, by default, it uses the inch-pound template that's in your installation or in your working directory. But you could obviously go and select a different folder. For example, I'm going to use one of my TriStar start parts. That's what I would like to use. There you go, right? So I've used that. Now, I'm not going to set up any other settings here. I just use a template, and I'm importing it. And this time, the geometry still didn't fix, as you can see, right? I still have a lot of those yellow edges, right? You can see those. That's not good, right? That's why it's not solidified yet. So if I go to a shading mode, right, you could see that if I go into a shading mode, it's still a surface model. However, I do have the datum planes, coordinate systems. I do have my view information and parameters, etc., right? So what I could do, I could further, now, do I have to keep doing it this way, or could I simply go in and set up an import profile editor? I could do that, right? I could just set up the templates here. I could go to surface topology settings, and I could change those. So, and then once you set that, you could save it as a zip file and point it in your config.pro, right? Now, in this case, if I go back to my same zip file, I want to open it one more time, but this time, apart from using the template, I'm going to make sure that the topology settings, right, I want to make sure the software tries to join surfaces from different layers, right? Whether it's in the same layer, different layer, it should automatically do that. And try to solidify closed volumes as much as it can, and try to heal it automatically, close gaps, repair unsatisfied geometry, etc., right? And I can go into surface and say, keep the B-spline surfaces, perform a G2 fix, right? A surface continuity fix right there. So these are the things you could try out with each option, but let's say I'm going to go select all of these options. And then if I'm going to import this model now, you can see that it takes a little bit, right? A few more seconds, as you can see, compared to previously where it's trying to fix that. And now if I go to a wireframe mode, you could see that they're all fixed. In fact, it's a solid now, right? You can see that it's if I go to shaded edge, it's a solid. And the quickest way that you could check if it's solid or not, right, other than the color, would be to check the volume in the model, right? When you check the volume, it has to have a volume that tells you that it's a solid part. So that's just a quick note on when you import neutral files. Now, let's say you tried that on one of your files and the automatic heal didn't work like in that exhaust model that I had, right? What options do you have? You could always use the import data doctor. Now, some of you may have used it, but those who have not used it, it's really a task-based repair tool. It's purpose-built for fixing geometry that gets lost or you have gaps, etc., when you import neutral files, right, into Creo. And it's been there for a long time in the old Creo General Wildfire releases as well as in the Creo release. Really, the way to get into that is you simply do an edit definition on your import feature, and many times, the time you want to spend on import data doctor, it really depends on the use case, right? I mean, what is the intention? What is the final goal of importing this part, the step file? Are you just using it as a space plane? Do you just want to use it as a part of your product structure? You really don't care about being it a solid model? Do you want to create any additional geometry? Are you looking to create dimensions in the drawing off of it? So based on that, the repair effort obviously varies. Sometimes, during my industry days, I used to use this just to get rid of some surfaces, just so that I could do my analysis, my stress analysis quicker, or maybe I want to run the manufacturing toolpath sequence on that model. That's my intent. So based on that, the repair effort could be minimal. It could be you're going to spend an hour on it, or half hour on it, or 5 minutes on it. It entirely depends on the final intended use, right? So really, just to give you a quick overview of what import data doctor really does, allows you to do, is it converts that import feature, right, that you see in your Creo model tree into a GTS tree, or a geometry and topology structure tree, which essentially breaks down that import feature into multiple surfaces, as you can see, right? So that you are able to go and delete overlapping surfaces, and you can probably define or search for gaps, slivers, add it to the wireframe of the model, and try fixing it, right? So like I said, again, there are several tools in here. I'll show you there are several tutorials on how to use import data doctor, both from a basic standpoint and from advanced repair standpoint. And once you use the import data doctor, the goal is, again, to make sure it's a solid model, right? And then you can start creating features from there. So before I move further here, let me just quickly show you an example. So this one is pretty straightforward, wherein I was able to just use those automatic settings in the import profile editor, and I was able to make it convert into a solid. Now let me try with another model here. And you see that it automatically keeps all those in session, right? I've not set up any config option here, but all that I used previously, right? The import profile editor, unless I quit Creo, it maintains that in session. And with all the same settings, I'm going to import another model. And when I imported this model, however, right, I don't think, you can see that in my wireframe view. You could see that I do see quite a lot of yellow edges there. It's telling me that there's a gap or a void in there, right in here. And obviously this requires import data adapter, right? So the first thing I do is I quickly edit definition on the import feature, and I get into the IDD mode, which is the import data adapter mode. And the first thing I notice is my topology, geometry topology tree, which has all the surfaces in there. Can you see that has this surface seems to be like an overlapping surface? I can always quickly hide that and check it. Looks like that's really like a duplicate surface that has happened a lot to me during my industry days, where I've seen you sometimes have overlapping surfaces. So I could pretty much get rid of that surface, right? And I need to work on these gaps though, right? How do I fix these, right? They don't seem to be uniform gaps. They seem to be, as you can see, varying in there. So a quick way to search for gaps is just use your search tool, right? Your search command, the binoculars, or just do a Control F. It comes up with the search, right? I'm sure you've used it in parts and features and assemblies where you want to search. And there I'm going to search for gaps, right? I just type in gaps in there. And I could give the maximum value of a gap, and it's going to find out everything less than that. So if I were to give 1 and I do a find now, see that I found out pretty much all the gaps. So let's say, apart from these two, I just wanted to just select the first 3 gaps, and then I want to add that to the wireframe, right? I'm just adding it to the wireframe so I can repair it. So when I do repair, as you can see, import data adapter is showing you the wireframe model of the part, right, that you imported, and I'm able to just fix that geometry. See how you did fix a few gaps in there. Now, sometimes you may have to also define gaps manually, right? You can define a gap or a sliver. For example, I want to define one side of it, and there's my second side in here. I want to create another gap and say that's one side, and that's a second side, right? So like that, and it automatically adds to my wireframe right here. So you can see in my, right in there, right, I can keep defining gaps like this. It auto adds the wireframe. And once it adds to the wireframe, I'm able to repair it, as you can see here, and we close that too. So I got one big void now, which is obviously, if I go to my shaded mode, you can see that that's really your, it's a huge gap, it's missing surface, and you don't want to close it using gaps. You obviously want to create a new surface, right? So I could probably just add a boundary blend or something like that, right, between these two. If you use surface modeling, you could add a quick boundary blend between those. Now, if I go to the wireframe mode, though, it still has that, you see that one-sided edge where it's not merged technically, right? And you see that how it's not within the component in my model tree, right, where I have all the other surfaces. I could simply drag and drop it. And once I drag and drop it, it's merged, right? So now I'm out of my import data adapter. I could say convert it to a solid, or I could use a solidify tool, right? Whichever works for me. And then there it goes, right? And I have my completed shaded model there, and I can start working on the model there. So sometimes you may have to use manual, methods, and sometimes you may have to just use automatic methods, right? Now, one more option you have with Creo 3. Now, whatever I showed you so far is possible in Wildfire releases as well as up to Creo 2. With Creo 3, you have a new workflow, and you have some options to directly work on the native file that I was talking about earlier in the presentation. Rather than trying to spend time on fixing geometry with neutral files, if your partner or supplier provides you those actual native file, whether it's SolidWorks, CATIA, NX, Inventor, or Solid Edge, you can directly import them without the need to go through a neutral file. So there are really 4 key elements to this Unite technology in Creo 3. The first 2 bullet points you see, the import and open capability, are included in the base license that you currently own, right? If you're on Creo 3, you'll be able to do that. The last 2, which is automatic update and save as, where you can export or you can also do an automatic update so that if the original source file gets changed, you don't have to re-import, and you don't have to lose all your changes you did or any other cross-platform design intent that you may have built in. It maintains all that. Also, you can export from a Creo assembly or part assembly, you can export it to a SolidWorks NX or CATIA format, right? So those two require a collaboration extension license. So it could be SolidWorks collaboration extension license, it could be NX collaboration extension license, or it could also be CATIA collaboration extension license, right? So it could be one of those three. Just to give you an idea of the difference between import versus open, right? Normally we are used to doing import, right? So I mean, when you're opening a step file, you're essentially importing or converting. So that's what happens when you open any native file into Creo, right? When you import, what happens, like an assembly there, it's going to really convert every single part and subassembly into a Creo format file. Now, your intent might be to just change one part, but you're changing the entire context, and from a file management standpoint, you're having to manage two, right? Two sets of files. The file that the partner sent you, which is the original CATIA file, and then you have the Creo versions or the converted Creo files. Rather than using import, if you use open, which is a new option available in Creo 3, you are able to directly work on that native file. So your assembly tree in Creo will look like this, where you have a Creo assembly and parts and a CATIA assembly and its part. So you are working on the native file, and if you want to convert or maybe edit, I should say, one of the parts, then the software prompts you to convert that. So you're doing like conversion on demand versus converting every single part and assembly, right? That when you collaborate in a multi-CAD environment, right? This is very important, I think. And also, when those original files get changed, right? Let's say at the source, right? Your partner or supplier, they changed that original file in that CAD in that CAD authoring tool, which is SolidWorks, CATIA, or NX, and you don't have to re-import. You can just do an automatic update, right, with that collaboration extension license. So that's really the key to the Unite technology, where you are working on the native file and managing the native file. You're not working with two sets of files here, right? You can also export if required. An entire assembly like this made of multiple CAD files as well as Creo files could be exported to a SolidWorks format, CATIA format, or NX format using that collaboration extension license. Okay. You can also build cross-platform design intent with this, wherein, let's say, the two gray parts of the tree that you see there are SolidWorks, and the rest of them are Creo files. And I would like to build, that's one of the most powerful aspects of Creo or parametric modeling, is that you're able to build your design intent, right, in parts and assemblies. Now imagine doing that between two critical geometries from two different files that are from two different CAD systems, right? So that's what we call cross-platform design intent. You're able to, reference that geometry either through a skeleton, if you will, right? A common component like a skeleton if you use top-down design, or just part-to-part referencing, and then you can use it for downstream applications, or it's for 2D drawings, to generate bill of materials, or to create an analysis, using Creo Simulate if you'd like. So, and then when you make a change, and using the automatic update, the original SolidWorks file got changed, you are able to drive that change into your Creo model that's referencing it, or it's being referenced either way, depending on how the parent-child relationship is built in there. But that's one of the advantages of using these collaboration extension licenses, where you're able to update. You don't have to redo all the work or re-import and then start over again, right? So the key benefits in working in a multi-CAD environment using Unite technology is you're really improving your productivity and efficiency, because you're working on the native file, and you're not really working on any of these neutral file formats and then trying to struggle with the import data doctor and trying to spend a lot of time fixing the geometry. I'm not saying that with the Unite technology you're going to always get a good clean geometry, but you are trying to minimize that translation that happens twice. Rather than that, you're working on the model directly, right? That's the key. And you're managing one single file rather than two different files there. The latest data exchange version support, according to PTC, is what I have in the slide, where you could see that as of the latest date code, you could see that Inventor 2016 is supported, SolidWorks 2015 as of MO40. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on, wherein PTC usually takes about, they have these DLL libraries or these third-party converter libraries in their installation. So we are looking at about 3 months a difference between the time SolidWorks or Inventor when they come up with a new release, and it takes 3 months for PTC to support that in the Unite technology, right? So it's better to always check it in the knowledge base there. Now, once you import this, there's always a question, right? Okay, let's say you imported a step file, or you imported directly the SolidWorks or Inventor file into Creo using Unite technology. Now what, right? You always still get that dump solid or import feature only, right? You don't get feature history. Now, why do you need feature history if you think about it? Like in this model, you could see that in Inventor, they have used extrusion, right? They've used one single feature to create that. They obviously have dimensions. But when I brought it into Creo, it's going to be featureless, right? It's going to be one import feature. Now, why do we need features, right? Obviously, to create a dimension, to create some drawings, maybe make some changes, right? I'm able to do all that using FMX. So flexible modeling extension allows you to do some feature recognitions like pattern recognition, round recognition, chamfer recognition, as well as do some move commands where you can move using dimensions. So don't think it's just for industrial designers to simply push and pull and create a cool looking product. It's much more than that. It's moving using constraints, moving using dimensions that you have known in Creo, right? It's very much like that, where you can see that how I've added the length and the width dimension of that part, and maybe the dimension of that hole, for example. So really, as and when required, you are able to add these features, move commands in FMX. So really, FMX allows you to edit geometry. So instead of thinking of it as edit definition of a feature, think of it as editing geometry, right? So it has some smart selection tools. Quickly, you can select bars, cuts, rounds, etc., including this adjacent geometry. You can also use offset commands, remove tool, attach tools, and also do some recognitions in there, right? So pretty good options there. Here's a few examples. Don't think that FMX is only for Creo, non-Creo files. You can also use it on a Creo file. So you can see that I have a model. It's a huge model tree, obviously with quite a few features. And I might want to make a quick late-stage design change that I need to get done really quickly. I couldn't afford to do an edit definition and then go through all those parent-child relationships and the references that may have been built in. Maybe it's really an outdated design intent, right? Some bad modeling practices were used back in the days when it was done. Now I would like to make a quick change. I could just select that geometry and I can attach it to another location really quickly using FMX, because it doesn't care about your parent-child references. It's just using geometry, right? That's all it is. So now, just before I move on here, just to quickly show you a quick example on Unite technology. If I were to open, let's say, an assembly here, I have a subassembly that I've opened here, and let's see that, as you can see, the assembly has pretty straightforward components done in Creo, right? Parts and subassemblies, and I would like to assemble, for example, one of the SolidWorks parts, right? So maybe the brake rotor is done by my partner or supplier, but they've used they're standardized on a different CAD system, and I would like to open that. So I'm not importing, right? So as you can see here, I'm opening, not importing. Now, please remember, when you use Creo connected to Windchill in a linked session, when you have PDM link, at that time, this open workflow will be grayed out. The reason is we don't allow you, obviously, to upload a SolidWorks part using Creo's Workgroup Manager that's built in, right? We want to make sure, obviously, that you use the SolidWorks Workgroup Manager to upload it into Windchill PDM link. So that's very important to note, right? You'll have to, if you have a linked session wherein you're connected to PDM link, then you would not be using this workflow, right? I'm just pulling it from a folder here. But there you would use your workgroup manager. You would install the workgroup manager of SolidWorks, upload that into your Windchill common space, and then you're able to open from common space. You can assemble it into your Creo assembly, right? So we're not really converting it at this point. I'm just saying, let's open this. So if you see the difference here is if you look at my model tree, I have Creo files in my assembly, and here's my SolidWorks file with the SolidWorks icon right there. So that is what tells you I've not converted it, right? I'm just working on the native file that my partner or supplier sent me, right? So here I'm going to do some very basic, let me just assemble this real quick here. And once I've assembled that, I might want to make a change to it, for example, right? So SolidWorks spot right there, but I can, or maybe do some feature recognition to it. I could activate that part, and maybe I might want to do a feature recognition, like a pattern recognition real quick here. So flexible modeling, right? As you can see here, introduced in Creo 1 and in Creo 2, it is also there. It's also there in Creo 3. It's a pure geometry editing tool, as you can see here, and I'm able to switch between my geometry editing tool to my regular parametric environment anytime I want. So to create features, I'm using my regular Creo features, parametric features, but to edit, I could switch to the flexible modeling environment where I have quick geometry selection options, right? I'm able to select that, and then I'm able to say, let's look for patterns, and as you can see, it identified the pattern. Even though it was done in SolidWorks, it was not created in Creo, it identified the pattern, and I have options to even do an edit. So for example, it has 12 instances with 30-degree spacing. Maybe I might want to do 6, right, with 60-degree, or let's say a different spacing, as you can see here. And I hit OK there, and you see how it completes it. So even though you don't get the full feature tree, you're working on the native file, you are able to go make these selective changes, feature recognitions. So maybe I want to put it back to 12 at 30 degrees right here. There it goes, right? I'm able to make that change. Not only that, I could, okay, that was just a feature recognition. Maybe I might want to change the orientation, the dimensions. I have so many options here. Again, I'm going to select a cut, and then I'm going to just do a move. And let's say when I do the move, as soon as I show my intent to make a change to the model, the software prompts me to convert, right, it to a Creo file. So it's more like on-demand conversion, right? I have options to rename them. That's why I have advanced options here, but let me just use the same name. And now you can see in my model tree, as soon as I'm done with this, it is converted into a regular Creo file now, right? It's no longer that SolidWorks file because I'm going to make a change to it, right? Now, let me get back to the change. When I want to do a change like that, for example, I want to do a move. I might want to apply that move on all the instances or all, when I apply it on a lead feature, like in Creo, you would do that. It applies to the other instances of the pattern. I could do the same thing, right? Wherein I could say, let's use that pattern that we identified, right? So when I make a change to one of them, I want all the others also to change, right? You see that? So some again, you could have used dimensions also there, right, if you want to, but I just did a quick a drag there. I could also use dimensions. So now apart from that, I might want to assemble a bolt or a fastener here. So maybe I might want to just also do another pattern recognition where I'm going to do a pattern recognition of these 4 holes, right? And once I'm done with the pattern recognition, I can get back to my assembly and let me assemble. For example, I might want to assemble, let's see here, a bolt that I have, right? So just could have used the Intelligent Fastener extension that's new in Creo 3, but I just use this bolt where I'm just using regular constraints. And I might also want to, once I complete that, as you can see, it's following it, but I could just say, let's just pattern it, and it follows the pattern. So now you could see that in my model tree, I've done a little bit of work here, right? I've done a little bit of pattern recognition, one move, and then I've also assembled a part to components that are made from different CAD systems here. Now, let's say after doing all this, I'm getting an email from my partner telling that this particular brake rotor it has to be changed in SolidWorks, and they are sending me another file. Now, I don't want to lose all the work that I did here, right? In the real world, you'll be doing a lot more work than this, obviously. So is there a way to just update this without losing the changes I did, the recognition I did, etc.? So just to simulate that, I do have another part, the same name, slightly changed, right? I'm going to put in my working directory real quick here. Okay. Now, how do I ask the system to check if it's outdated or not? I could use the ATB. Some of you've used it before. You know, ATB stands for Associative Topology Bus, and wherein I'm able to check the status. So the software is going to run through the entire assembly and check if there are any imported features and see if there is going to be a change in what you have, for example, in your workspace or in your working directory compared to what you have in session. That's what it's going to check. And you see how it found there was a difference between the two, right? And also, if you look at your model tree, you see a small clock symbol telling me that it's out of date. So this out of date is similar to when you work in a Windchill environment wherein you have a part in your workspace, right? You have added to your workspace, you did not check it out, but then, and one of your coworkers or colleagues has worked on it, and he has checked in a later version of it, and it'll be out of date, and you can update it, right? So it's kind of a similar workflow, as you can see here. I might want to update that. So you can see right now the rotor, if I zoom in here, as you can see, the brake rotor has these cuts in here. I just created another model, right, in SolidWorks, which didn't have that, and now I'm going to go and let's update that. Now, when I say update, you see how it's doing a replace. In session, it's going to get rid of the original part, and it's going to replace. You see how it replaced right now, and then it puts the changes that I did on it. So this is the power of that collaboration extension license. So if you look at my system information here, my licensing collaboration extension of SolidWorks, right? This is the license feature that allowed me to do this. And also, I'm going to go save it as a SolidWorks assembly if I want to, right? I might want to send the entire assembly back, where I'm going to do that. The individual parts will be SolidWorks parts, sub-assemblies will be SolidWorks assemblies, etc., right? So that's the export option you have. So just before I wrap up here and do the Q&A session, just a few links that might help you to become more efficient and productive in the current software that you're using, whether it's Creo or Windchill. You know, we do have a resource center at TriStar where we have some of our past webinars. We'll also be uploading this webinar. We'll have a recording of this webinar also. You know, made available shortly in this resource center, and this would cover a variety of topics that are done by our experienced application engineers at TriStar, by our engineering team. And also you could use a learning exchange that has a lot of tutorials, and obviously the knowledge base, and also enhancement details. So really quickly, this is how the resource center looks like, wherein you have some of them might be a dated one, but still they will have some good tips and tricks. For example, what's new in Creo 3 or Sketcher best practices, tips and tricks, things like that. You might want to check this when you go to TriStar. You have a resource center and the CAD, data management, product development, etc. That's kind of where we archive or we store all our webinar recordings. If you're unable to attend it, or one of your colleagues or coworkers couldn't attend it live and you would like to take a look at it, please point them to this resource center. And then the Learning Exchange, a lot of tutorials from PTC, right? You can select the app that you want, and then it has a lot of tutorials there, as well as the e-support or the knowledge base. The knowledge base has quite a lot of tutorials that you could search. For example, you were interested to know more about Unite technology that I just demonstrated. You could just type in Unite technology in the context of when I use it in a Windchill environment, and then it's going to give you some options, right? You see that how Unite technology, what is the support details, implications, etc., right? What workflows are supported, what are not supported in various date codes, right? As you can see here, right? The following workflows are supported, following are not supported, things like that, right? So And also the import data doctor, right? I just showed you a couple examples on import data doctor, one example I think, but you could always, in the help, there's a lot of tutorial, or you can go to your knowledge base and you can search for import data doctor that has tutorials on that as well. Okay. Now, just a quick reminder on what I mentioned earlier in the webinar about this 50% savings that you get when you update your perpetual Creo license to a subscription model, right? Obviously, with a subscription model, you have flexible licensing. You pretty much pay for what you use, kind of a model there, and allows predictable budgeting, obviously, right? So, and if you have any questions specific to the subscription offer, please contact your reps, reach out to your reps at TriStar. Now, with that said, I know we went over a little bit beyond our 30-minute time here. However, if you could please let me know with any questions. Let me also, if you could start typing in those chat sessions. I think there are a few. Let me just go through one by one here. There was one question about, can auto repair be used in a specific section of the import? We have problems with it trying to fix one area and messing up another area that didn't have a problem. That's a great question, Mike. So when you import, remember the auto repair settings that you're doing, the healing options that you're using, it's like a setting that you apply in the import profile editor. So unfortunately, it does apply to the entire model, unless you do want to have it as an assembly where you separate it out as different volumes of surfaces and then merge it, which I think might be a little tedious. So directly, we don't have an option to create like volumes or say that only here you could do the repair. However, as a workaround, what I would do is without doing those settings up front in the import profile editor, once you enter import data doctor, try that search all gaps, and that's kind of like automatically trying to do it, right? And you can do that, and then you can go to selectively to certain areas and manually, try to fix it or getting rid of. Sometimes it's just worth is it worth spending so much time on fixing it? Let's just get rid of that surface and then recreate it, right? So that's the option. The next question is, the data exchange version support chart available on ptc.com? Yes, it is actually. Let me just demonstrate that. It's all you do is in your knowledge base, you simply search for data exchange version support, right? Whoops, it's a typo. Talking and typing here. And when you do that, as you can see, the first hit that you get is the data exchange version support, and this is something that you should have it as a favorite. This particular article, I should say, the reason is PTC keeps updating it, right, with the latest each release, right? Whether it's M200 of Creo 2.0 or it's M70 of Creo 3.0, right? You always want to look at that. And here you see that they just recently updated it, and yeah, this is the one I had. But yeah, this is something that it's available in the knowledge base, right? It has its full list, including even ITIS, right? The versions that we support, Parasolid, even step versions. Remember, I was talking about the different step versions or formats, I should say. Let's see. Sometimes a step or other file types import as a Creo assembly. What is the best way to have them import as a Creo part? Great question. What you do is you start with a new part, right? You would go and into your Creo, right? You start a new part, and then, so instead of doing a file open, get data, and then import that step file, right? So try that, wherein you're going to, the idea behind doing a part is you're ensuring that the software doesn't identify different volumes and different layers of what is done in the original step format, right? Where it depends on how they exported it, right? In SolidWorks or Inventor or in whatever CAD system they use. But here you're ensuring that you create a part and then you use import, right? And then you import, and it has all the same things, right? It has it's kind of like many times, if you don't set up your import profile editor, there's another way where you're setting up your start part and then importing the actual model, right? So, Darren says, thank you for this. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. SolidWorks export to 2005. What the use on the other side is on SolidWorks 2015 plus. Actually, okay, so let me see. There's actually in my, if you look at the data, yeah, the supported versions, right? The export. When we say 2005, it means that we go all the way back up to 2005, right? So when I export from Creo 2005, you can open that SolidWorks file in 2005, 6, 7, or all the way up to 2015 plus, because SolidWorks, just like Creo, they should allow you to open a lower release model in a higher release, if that makes sense, right? So that's just telling you that how far we go back, right? But you could, but yeah, they should be able to open it in 2015 or even 2016 if that's out. When using Windchill, do you need a workgroup manager for each file type? So yes, Brian. So if you were to have, like I mentioned, what I demonstrated is I opened a SolidWorks file from a file system that somebody emailed me, and I'm using that in my assembly. And if I save it, what happens? I have in my working folder my Creo assembly and Creo parts and the SolidWorks part, right? That's all it is. I didn't convert it, let's say, right? If I didn't make a change. However, when you manage files in Windchill PDM Link, as you know, the workgroup manager of SolidWorks is required for you to interact or upload the data to your common space. So it's more like, imagine your Windchill in your common space, you are able to manage files from multiple CAD systems, right? We call it heterogeneous design, right? We can do that. However, you do need the workgroup manager to upload it first, and then what you could do from there, you are able to assemble it. So let's say you check it out, you add it to your workspace, and then you're able to kind of open it, right? When you do the open, you are able to add that to your Creo assembly, and then you can make changes to it, right? So if you want to, using Creo's Unite technology. I've been using Creo 2 at my work. I know our license is good for 2.0 and 3.0. Can I install 3.0 on the same machine I use for 2.0? Absolutely, Darren. So that's yeah, you could do that. So the only thing is, you have, please make sure that yeah, like your licenses are always downward compatible, right? So if you're on maintenance or support, you simply request for a license. Do a license request through PTC, right? And they will send you the latest one, which is obviously 3.0. And that license works for 2.0, 3.0, even Wildfire 5. Now, having said that, be careful, because let's say you're testing out Creo 3.0, you're able to run both 3 and 2, right? Depending on the number of licenses you have, let's say you have one license, you can only run one at a time, obviously. But then let's say you are going to run that. I mean, you opened a file from Creo 2 in Creo 3 and you saved it, right? You will not be able to open it back in Creo 2. Just remember that, because it becomes, obviously PTC does not allow you to back save to an old release unless you use the GCRI, right? The patch, the Granite-based cross-release interoperability, which is like a DLL that you get to download. And it still doesn't give you edit and edit definition capability, but you could just look it up. It's called GCRI, the knowledge base, and it'll talk about the limitations. But that's one thing you've got to be careful about, but you can run both using the same license. What is the best way to export a Creo assembly as a step that imports as a part? I think I may have answered that earlier, right? If you want to import a step file as a part, you would create a new part and then do import data, right? Use the import data, or under the get data, like I was showing you earlier, and right here, get data imports are ensuring that it will be a part, and then you're importing the geometry as one, right? That's the best way. So it's more like you have control on the import rather than on the export. Moses, thank you for the nice presentation. We have a presentation file. Oh yeah. What I'll do is I will email you. I will be all these webinars that we are running. Like I said, It will be available in our resource center as a recording, all right? But also, for those all the attendees, what we can do is I can send out a PDF of the presentation. Absolutely, I can do that. Right. Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, so I think I pretty much, I don't see any other questions right there. Yeah, I know. Thanks for all your time. One more. Okay, there's one more right there. Step for write files to give to another company partners. Got it, Darren. So it looks like what you're saying is when you export step and IGES files to other companies or partners, you probably don't want your proprietary design details, and then you go in through the import data doctor and remove. I see what you mean. Now, okay, so this is why we have shrink wrap. I see what you mean. It's instead of using import data doctor to get rid of or to suppress or things like that, the whole point of PTC having one of the biggest advantages of shrink wrap, you simply open your part and do a save as of a shrink wrap. I understand even in shrink wrap you have to give a quality, right, from 1 through 10, right, depending on how much information you want to give out. But your shrink wrap might be a better option where you have more control and you can say fill holes automatically, or it's from the inside out. You just want to have kind of like an envelope, right? You're just giving the outer surface to your partner, but not the internal geometry. So the shrink wrap, I don't know if you've tried that. It works in assemblies and parts. You might want to, yeah. So you could try that. The other option is, I don't know if you've used a remove command. You could use editing remove. This remove command, the reason I mentioned remove, what I show you here in here, this is obviously a much better way to quickly remove geometry rather than trying to suppress in Creo. As you know, when you try to suppress in Creo, depending on the modeling practice used, you suppress a parent feature, the child feature gets removed, right? So you could automatically or suppress. So if you don't want that, you could just remove geometry or even use a simplified direct in the part mode to remove selected surfaces, and then try and export, right, if you feel even shrink wrap is not helping you, right? So those are, some of the options I would have used, if you want to have selective geometries to be exported. All right, so it looks like, I've gone through pretty much all the questions we had, and this is just a reminder on the future topics here. So yesterday we ran this the same thing, but some of you couldn't get in. That's why we had to rerun it today. However, moving forward, advanced part modeling, fasteners, this is on the Creo side, and similarly we have on the windshield side as well. So please reach out to us and let us know if you would also like to include any specific topics other than what you see here, right? Please reach out to us and let us know your thoughts on future webinar topics that might help you. And with that, thank you. Thanks all of you for your time. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you all in a future webinar.